Imagine being fired by a spoiled rich kid after 11 years of dedication, only to find out he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Hi everyone. This is another true story that came to me from one of our followers. What you're about to hear is one of those stories that sounds like a movie script, but actually happened in the corporate world. It's a story of sabotage, revenge, and justice that will leave you breathless until the end. Seriously, don't leave before it's over. The ending is simply epic. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and share this story. Because the more support you give, the more incredible stories like this I can bring to you. My name is Lily, and I had been working at a company for almost 11 years. I wasn't just any regular employee. I had built the customer service department literally from scratch, closed over 100 major contracts, and trained almost the entire team that worked there. I was one of those people who arrived early, left late, worked on holidays, and still answered phone calls while going through my own divorce. You know that kind of employee a company can't live without? That was me. The company had been founded by Mr. Cole, a man of integrity who valued loyalty and hard work. But recently, he had handed over the reins to his son Ryan, who had just taken over as CEO. Ryan was everything you imagine when you think of a spoiled heir: arrogant, impulsive, and with zero real-world business experience. On that fateful morning, I was in the break room preparing my breakfast, adding some oat milk, when Ryan walked in. He didn't greet me or smile, just looked at me like I was an old piece of furniture he wanted to throw out. In a cold, emotionless voice, he called me to his office. It wasn't a request, it was a command. When we got to his office, he didn't even bother sitting down. He simply told me I was fired, that they didn't need lazy people like me ruining the place. I was completely shocked. After 11 years of total dedication, to be treated like trash by a kid who barely knew the business was surreal. My heart was pounding in my ears. I wanted to scream, defend myself, demand an explanation. But instead, I smiled. A calm, polite, calculated smile. I said I understood and wished him a good day. I left his office with my head held high, but inside I was trembling. My colleagues noticed something was wrong. Some were about to ask, but I just nodded slightly. I didn't want to make things harder. I quietly packed my desk and left. Driving home, the memories flooded in. 11 years. More time than I had given my own family. Sleepless nights, working on holidays, taking calls while holding back tears after my divorce. I had given everything to that company, and now I was being discarded like I was nothing. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was curious. Something felt really off about the way Ryan had done it. So confident, so unconcerned. The timing was also strange, because we were just about to close one of the biggest contracts in company history, something I had worked on for 6 months. I knew that client inside out and had personally scheduled the final meeting for Friday, and now I was out. The next morning, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but when I answered, I immediately recognized the voice of Mr. Cole, the true owner of the company, the man who had hired me 11 years ago. His voice was tense, as he asked why I had packed my things and left. I explained that his son had fired me, saying I was lazy and no longer needed. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Then he took a deep breath and asked if I had read my contract. I was confused. I didn't understand where he was going. He explained that Ryan was supposed to finalize the deal with Kingswell that day, but there was a clause in my contract, one he had insisted on after the last acquisition disaster. I wasn't just the account manager. I was the only authorized negotiator for the Kingswell deal. I felt my blood run cold. Ryan couldn't close the deal without me. Not legally, not ethically, not practically. The contract would fall apart without my presence. A realization slowly hit me. Ryan hadn't read the contract. He had no idea what he had done. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The betrayal still hurt, but now I felt something entirely different. Control. He had been too quick to pull the trigger, and now the gun was pointed right back at him. Mr. Cole hung up without another word, but I could feel his fury in the silence that followed. I sat in my apartment, frozen, processing everything. Ryan had fired someone without even reading the contract, like a spoiled child playing CEO, making decisions like he was playing a video game. But real companies don't have reset buttons. I didn't have to wait long. At 10:13, my phone rang. It was Ryan. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another call. From reception, then legal, then accounting. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree. I didn't answer a single call. When I finally listened to the messages, the first was from Ryan himself. His voice was tense, saying there had been a misunderstanding, that maybe he'd acted too fast, that they urgently needed me back. He didn't apologize, not even the fake kind people give in offices, just panic disguised as politeness. Then Nicole, a former co-worker, called to say Ryan had gotten chewed out by his father in front of everyone. Mr. Cole had thrown the Kingswell contract on the table and asked point blank if Ryan had read it before firing me. Ryan tried to bluff, talking about taking the company in a new direction, but Mr. Cole wasn't buying it. He pointed directly to the clause that made me the only authorized negotiator, explaining that it was there for a reason. Nicole said Ryan went pale as a ghost when he realized he was the reason Kingswell was about to walk away. Around 11:15, I received a message from Mr. Cole himself, apologizing for what had happened, admitting he had misjudged the situation, and asking me to come back, not just for the deal, but to talk privately. I'll admit it was tempting, but I wasn't ready to just come back as if nothing had happened. Ryan's mistake wasn't just about a contract. It was about respect, about trust, about years of my life that couldn't be repaired with a desperate phone call. I replied saying I would consider returning to finalize the Kingswell deal, but only under specific conditions, and that I wanted to speak directly with Mr. Cole before making any decisions. When I arrived at the office, it was already past noon. I didn't go in through the employee entrance. I walked through the main lobby like a guest. I knew it would attract attention. Everyone knew I had been fired the day before, and now my return wasn't just a return, it was a statement. Mr. Cole was waiting for me at the door to his office. We went in, and he closed the door, letting out a long sigh. He admitted he had made a huge mistake. He said he'd given his son too much authority too fast, wanting him to prove himself, but hadn't expected him to burn bridges before learning to build them. He offered me my job back with full autonomy to close the deal, but I made it clear I wanted everything in writing. A revised contract, clear authority over Kingswell, and no interference from Ryan. More importantly, I said this couldn't happen again. Not to me, not to anyone. As I left the office, I saw Ryan standing in the hallway, arms crossed, pretending to have a serious conversation with a junior executive, but his eyes locked on mine the moment I appeared. I didn't look away, didn't hesitate. I walked right past him. For a second, I swear I saw the exact moment he realized he was losing control. The meeting with Kingswell went flawlessly. 2 hours later, we shook hands and signed the deal. Mr. Cole came up to me afterward, genuine relief on his face, saying I had saved them. I replied that he owed his company a leader, someone who knows the difference between power and responsibility. The following week, the Kingswell deal made headlines in our industry newsletter. My name wasn't mentioned, but everyone in the company knew who had closed it. My inbox was flooded with congratulatory messages, some from people who had stayed silent during the storm. But I knew it wasn't over. Ryan may have been quiet that day, but men like him don't just disappear. They retreat, and then they retaliate. And that's exactly what happened. Small things started happening. First, expense reports were delayed for no reason. Then documents I submitted for approval came back unsigned. And then the worst. An email I never sent, supposedly from my account, was flagged by one of our partners. It contained false information about a client and had already been forwarded to a contact, damaging that relationship significantly. It investigated and found no sign of external hacking. The email had been sent from inside the office. That's when I knew Ryan was behind it. Unable to fire me again, he now wanted to discredit me, make me look incompetent, ruin my reputation slowly until I quit on my own. It was classic corporate sabotage. I started documenting everything. Every missing email, every error I didn't make, every unexplained delay. I had learned the hard way that evidence is more powerful than emotions in this kind of environment. One afternoon, walking past a meeting room, I overheard Ryan's voice, loud enough to not be a private conversation. He was saying I'd been unstable since returning, that I'd been erratic and aggressive, and maybe I wasn't the right person to handle high-level clients anymore. He said he was just suggesting they start thinking about new leadership for customer service, that I had clearly overextended myself. My blood ran cold, not from fear, but from the precision of his tactics. He was planting doubts, poisoning the atmosphere again. That night, Mr. Cole showed up at the office with a folder. It was my revised contract, with everything we had agreed on, but he also told me he had launched an internal audit because too many things had recently been filed incorrectly. When I asked why he hadn't stopped Ryan sooner, he said he needed to see how far his son would go. He said he was trying to protect both of us, but maybe it was too late for one of us. The internal audit uncovered everything. Faked emails, suspicious login traces, disappearing files, attempts to use HR complaints as weapons, all under Ryan's orders, manipulating people who worked for him. At the final audit meeting, Ryan arrived late, smug, without a trace of concern on his face, until he saw me. When the auditors presented the evidence, his confident posture started to crack. Mr. Cole had finally seen enough. Ryan was suspended immediately, and later fired for unethical conduct. A few weeks later, Mr. Cole called me into his office again. This time there was a promotion letter on the table. Director of Customer Strategy, an executive position reporting directly to him. He said I had shown more leadership in the past month than most executives do in their entire careers. I accepted, but made it clear I didn't want just a title. I wanted to rebuild that culture the right way. In the following weeks, I restructured the department, reopened communication channels, reinstated people who had been unfairly pushed out, and created an anonymous reporting system so no one would ever have to fear retaliation again. As for Ryan, the last I heard, he was trying to land interviews at smaller firms out of state, but his reputation had arrived before him. Some say Mr. Cole pulled some strings to make sure his name didn't go public, maybe his final act of protection as a father. One afternoon, walking through the office, I stopped by the glass wall where we had once signed the Kingswell deal. I remembered everything, the sabotage, the panic call, the final triumph. That deal changed my career, but the real turning point didn't happen there. It happened the moment I looked Ryan in the eye, smiled, and walked out of his office without begging. That was my turning point, not because I gave up, but because I realized my worth. And that was the incredible story from a follower on the other platform. A lesson about how arrogance can be anyone's downfall, no matter their position. Lily didn't just survive the storm. She came out stronger on the other side. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share it with your friends. Also, leave a comment telling us what you thought, and if you've ever been through something similar at work. Your story might be the next one I tell here. See you next time.